Good evening. I am Dr. JV Dewatia. I am the professor of intensive care and the head of the Department of Anesthesiology, Critical Care and Pain at the Tata Memorial Hospital in Mumbai.
What do we understand by beyond ICU care? Because we know that ICU is best intensive care you can give to a patient.
So there are two aspects to this. One, the intensive care unit, of course, the ICU is where you treat the sickest patients. But there are 2 points in the patient's journey in the hospital that we need to look at. One is before the patient comes to the intensive care unit, when he's in the ward or in the emergency department, and we need to make sure that he's well looked after and well monitored, and his deterioration is picked up early so that intensive care can be more effective and beneficial to the patient. The second part comes is when patients are discharged from the intensive care unit. They may still not be 100% well, and they still need to be looked after on the wards or on some other unit. And again, they may not need all the interventions that we do in the intensive care unit, but they certainly need a lot of monitoring. And there again, vital sign monitoring on a continuous, regular basis is extremely vital so that we pick up any early signs of deterioration and then we can intervene in time. So one is you try and prevent an ICU admission or get an early ICU admission. And second part is you see to it that your efforts in the ICU are not wasted because you could not pick up a deterioration subsequently on the wards.
How do you prioritize patient care and resource allocation in high dependency units?
So when you talk of high dependency units, you're looking at patients who need some interventions but probably a lot of monitoring. And so high dependency units would be for patients who say had major surgery but who do not need active organ support, who just need again more monitoring and a little bit of basic sort of intensive care interventions. You would want to look at patients who you discharge from the ICU. Instead of going straight to the ward, you would probably send them to a high dependency unit where they're again better monitored and better looked after in a slightly less intensive environment than the ICU, but more intensive than what they might get in the ward. So that's sort of thing you'd look at. And many patients who need interventions, who need but don't need organ support, but still need frequent monitoring and frequent interventions, are better looked after in an intensive care unit, in a high dependency unit rather than a intensive care unit. So that way you'd spare beds in the ICU for really sick patients. At the same time, you make sure that the patients who deserve slightly higher levels of care than what can be offered in the ward is available for the patients.
Can you discuss a challenging case you encountered while providing critical care outside of the ICU and how you managed it?
Well, I provide most of my care in the ICU, but I do know of patients who we manage, we salvage, and we send them to the wards, and again they need to come back to us, and those are the real challenges, and they are the ones which are sometimes heartbreaking, because after you've saved someone who was on the verge of death, you do everything, you get him better, but they're still fragile. Most patients are fragile even after they leave the ICU, and they still need to be monitored. A small lapse in care on the wards or a small dips in care, in the level of care, can sometimes be fatal for patients, and that's the sort of thing we need to guard against.
How do you transfer patients from ICU to critical care unit, considering the environmental change?
From ICU
To critical care unit.
or you mean high dependency unit?
Yeah.
So once patients, so let me put this way, again, when patients, there's always a pressure for ICU beds, and all patients are not 110% fit even after they've recovered from their severe illness. And when they've recovered, mostly recovered, say 90% recovered, we may have to make room for another patient to come into the ICU, and that's the time we might considering shifting these patients to high dependency rather than to the ward. Because again, like I said, high dependency, they have more care, they have more monitoring, and we can monitor them. Today we have solutions to even remotely monitor patients. So when they go to a high dependency, you can still monitor them in the ICU through remote monitoring and with devices which can monitor these patients. So that's an additional advantage. So we only change the location of care, but the people who are looking after the patients, they probably remain the same, and there is some continuity of care that can be maintained.
What do you believe are the key challenges and opportunities in expanding critical care services?
The challenges in expanding critical care is, one is cost, the second is human resources, and the third is space. I mean, you need to have a lot of all of these to expand critical care. What are the opportunities? I think nowadays we have the concepts of critical care beyond the walls of the ICU, and we can expand at least the monitoring aspects of critical care beyond the ICU with remote monitoring solutions. We have opportunities. The COVID outbreak showed that there is a need for intensive care, and not just for COVID, not just for the corona, but the same resources can be used for other sick patients. And even in a country like India, there are trauma, there's accidents, there's poisonings, there's malaria, there's tropical diseases, dengue, young patients who have every chance of getting well and contributing to society after they recover. So I think there is a real need for intensive care in India for such patients, and I think the challenge is to make sure we have the resources, we provide the resources, and to provide such care to our patients. Thank you.